Hey guys, Dusty here. Today I want to share with you my experience running with a Stryd Pod over the last 6 months. So a Stryd Pod is a wearable device that clips onto your shoe. And for me personally, I use the Stryd for one specific reason, and that is as a power meter. However, you're going to get a ton of analytics when you run with the Stryd Pod. So just to show you on the app here, some of your metrics, you're going to get power, pace, heart rate, cadence, form, power ratio, LSS, which is leg spring stiffness, air power, elevation, vertical oscillation, ground contact time, stride length. You're going to get some weather analytics, time and zones. Now, don't get scared. I know a lot of that sounds really intense. To be honest, I use 5% of those metrics. And like I mentioned, the biggest thing I'm using this Stryd Pod for is as a power meter. So if you're familiar with using a power meter or training with watts on, say, like a Peloton bike or training for triathlon, same idea, just for running. There's also a Stryd membership you can become a part of, and basically that can provide a training plan for you. To be honest, I haven't looked at that at all. I don't use it personally. I've really just been using it as a data point over the last 6 months to accumulate some data, and I have a 10K race coming up in less than 3 weeks, and I'll be trying to pace that based on my Stryd Pod, aka power or watts. Hey, just editing the video. One quick thing that I missed. The race predictor on the Stryd app I find is way out to lunch. It for me at least, it's predicting faster times than I can run at pretty low wattages. So the wattages it's given me to run those specific times, I can hold those watts, but there's no way that they equate to that fast of race times. I've found this to be the case since I first got the Stryd Pod and been using the Stryd app. And anyways, I just wanted to include that in this video. But with that being said, here are some things I really like about the Stryd Pod. It's going to be really helpful if you're running uphill, downhill, with a tailwind, against a headwind. Throw up an example on the screen. This run here, I did a 10K tempo, and I lapped my watch every 2.5K. The trail went 2.5K out, 2.5K back, and I did that twice. This trail is completely flat, so there's no elevation factor here. And this specific day was super windy. So you can see my first 2.5K, I ran in 8:27 with an average power of 368, and that was with a tailwind. And then coming back, I ran 8:34, so a little bit slower, and I had higher power at 386 watts. And I think come race day, especially for less experienced runners, this can be very helpful. If you're running into a headwind, and you look down at your watch and you're running 20 seconds per mile slower than that effort feels like, just take a look at your power and you'll know that your effort is on track. It's just this headwind is so strong that it's slowing you down that much. Another helpful tip is when you actually display your power on your watch, you can either have real-time power, so the current power, you can have a 3-second average, a 10-second average, or 30-second average. Now, I strongly urge you to go with the 3-second average because the real-time average is going to be too finicky. It's going to be constantly changing. You're going to have to constantly be peeking at your watch to see if you're on track. Whereas the 3-second average obviously is going to take the last 3 seconds and give you your power output based on that. And I feel like the 10 and especially the 30 might just be a little bit too long of an average, especially if you had like a long downhill section. You might look at your watch and think, oh, I'm not running hard enough, and you pick up the pace too much. So that's just my opinion. I personally definitely would not go real-time setting on your watch though. Another thing to keep in mind is your power could and should slightly change depending on your shoe. So if you have a big heavy training shoe, obviously to run the same paces as like a super carbon plated race day shoe, you're going to have to put out way more power. So just something to keep in mind, especially if you're someone like me and constantly switching through shoes. As far as battery life, this thing has been fantastic. I believe it's rated for up to 20 hours, and I haven't recorded how long I go in between charges, but it's definitely probably up there. For me, I'd say probably once every 10 days to 2 weeks is when I get a low battery warning, and then I have to recharge. So like I mentioned, I have a 10K race coming up soon, and my goal is to pace that race based on power. So the minimum sort of power I'm looking to hit while I'm racing is 400 watts. Over the last few months, I've calculated out at 400 watts, I should get minimum a 31, 30, 10K on this specific course. Price of the Stryd Pod, at least here in Canada, is $350. And do I think it's worth it? I'm not sure yet if it's 100% worth it for me. I don't pay for the membership, I just have the hardware. I do love having another data point. I love analytics, even though I don't use most of the ones that Stryd provides. This 10K I have coming up will be the first time I've ever raced a run based on power. Ultimately though, when it comes time for race day, I know what that effort feels like and I'll hopefully be able to hit it, but it will be nice to, at certain points throughout the race, to look down and make sure that I'm running at least at 400 watts. So anyways, that's my experience. You can make this as intense and in-depth and analytical as you want to make it, or you can make it super simple like me and just use it as a data point in terms of power or watts. If you have any questions about the Stryd Pod, leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to get back to you. Like always, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.